Now coming in on the broadcast, we have two super tankers that have made a U-turn in Hormuz as the US-Iran talks break down. So a clear indication of what the situation is like in the Strait of Hormuz. Now remember, there have been two different versions that have come in, one from the United States, another from Iran, and now we have clear indications of what the situation is like on the ground, because as we speak, two super tankers have actually taken a U-turn or have returned from Hormuz. So these are the visuals. Clearly a lot also actually hinged on the talks that are taking place in Islamabad. If things had gone according to plan, then there could be a free movement of the vessels in the region. But that was not to be, and now we are seeing that vessels are returning. Major General, if I can bring you in here, on what is expected next. On one hand, there were already a lot of doubts that were cast on the talks in the first place because it was talks directly between US and Iran, and other factors like Israel and Lebanon were not even part of the talk. So was it a talk that was intended to fail because of the multiple challenges around it? And what happens next?
Well, Pratibha, firstly, thanks for having me on your show. Well, we need to take a bifocal view as to where this situation is and where this situation is headed. Well, first and foremost, negotiation is a process. Yeah. It doesn't have very certain outcomes. You know, the war oscillates between the battlefield and the negotiation venue. And while the battlefield conditions are very clear, on the negotiation table, the situation is always hazy. Therefore, the first and foremost was that these talks were not expected to succeed. It was a process where the two sides ultimately came to the table after 1979.
Yes.
And that's a very major breakthrough. The second very important issue, I just did a piece in the Indian Express, that there are three possibilities in these talks. One is that straightaway breakthrough. Well, possibly it has happened. Second was some kind of interim statement or agreement, which actually not happened. And third was some conclusive agreement. Now, please remember, in diplomacy, there's a lot of unsaid, then said. And my experience both on the battle zone and the diplomacy, that a lot of things are unsaid. Nothing comes out very clearly. A lot of back channels are there. Yeah. But as we have been looking at what possibly would happen, first and foremost, the 5 sticky points have been enumerated time and again. But the point is, what is the most important of them? Most important is currently Strait of Hormuz. That's a center of gravity. And that's a choke point, trump card with both. Yes. In case Iran has displayed the trump card, and as far as America is concerned, they would like to snatch this trump card from Iran. So therefore, one is the Strait of Hormuz. Yes, blockade is very much possible, and that's where the further, as far as the battle zone is concerned, that will take place. Second is the ceasefire. Most likely will be extended. Why, Pratibha? Because both sides want to off-ramp. They don't want to go to the same situation, because in the war, when you hit a stalemate, when there's a diminishing return, there's no point pursuing the war the way it is. So therefore, I like to leave with you with two very important points. Firstly, in diplomacy, a lot is unsaid. Possibly they are back channel working. Possibly they will come back again. And the second is, Hormuz is going to be the center of gravity for next coming days. Pratibha.
Okay, all right. Since you spoke about the Strait of Hormuz, let's also talk about how this is very, very significant, and this is an issue that is at the center of the talks, yes, but it's also an issue that is not between these two countries. It is going to affect everybody across the world. You and me are also going to be affected. So let's talk about whether this is actually going to turn into a new battleground. Now, this is important because Trump has spoken about a naval blockade. Now, remember, this comes with its own set of challenges because of the geography of this entire region, and because, of course, Iran has control over the entire region. It's not going to be easy for the United States, though Trump has claimed that we are going to bring in a naval blockade. That's a threat that has been given by Trump. This is all on social media. We're still awaiting a statement to come in from Trump. But remember, the claim that has been made is that while Iran holds strategic lever in this region, there could be the US military that could, naval fleet that could move in. This is the threat that has come in from Trump. Let's get you more breaking updates now coming in on the broadcast. So Iran's version on why talks failed. Let's talk about what Iran has to say. So Iran has said there was no expectation as such. There is a lot of distrust after the weeks of war that has gone on, going on to say that these negotiations in itself were extremely hostile. We actually have Irfan joining us from Islamabad to give us an understanding of what the situation is in Pakistan, considering the talks took place there. Irfan is joining us live from Islamabad. And Irfan, the entire world was watching, and clearly the talks didn't go as expected. Give us a better understanding of what you're picking up on what actually went wrong.
Actually, nobody had high expectations that there will be any breakthrough, in a day or two. But since the U.S. delegation left from Islamabad, we have seen a lot of statements, which could derail the peace process. But I believe that the United States has given enough chance to Iran, to show flexibility. But I don't know why, Iranian delegation was a bit harsh in a way that, they should have at least, show some flexibility. But Iranians were equally harsh to the U.S. because, J.D. Vance, he came with a red line, straight away red line, because he spoke to President Trump back home, 10 to 12 times, he said in his press briefing. And on the top of the agenda, there was one point that, they want to eliminate all those uranium enrichment facilities, and, they do not want Iran to go for nuclear, facility. But Iran did not agree on that, and everybody knew that, Iran would not agree. But, they said their behavior was not nice, and, it was too harsh and too excessive, from United States in the first meeting. But, the U.S. delegation, they said there were a lot of things which were agreed behind the door, and they do not want to disclose it. But they have, conveyed their message to the Iranians that, this is their red line, and they can accommodate such things. But I believe that the talks could continue, in a day or two, because, there are other stakeholders.
So, in fact, Iran actually did come into the negotiations with a sense of distrust, and that has been very clear with the statement that they have issued. Irfan, do stay with us, requesting our guests also to stay with us as we slip into a very short break here. But the bigger questions still remain on, if now the talks have failed, what's going to happen next? What are the possible scenarios, and what is the impact it will have on you and me, on people across the globe? We talk about that after a short break. Do stay with us.